time is of the essence at this age. And instead of kind of being on the fence about whether to not do it or, whether to just keep the money in a savings account, it kind of costs you. So if you wait to figure that out till later, when you have more money or more income, you might have already lost amount of money that you could have grown over time.
Welcome to the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast, a higher education in personal finance. This podcast is for PhDs and PhDs-to-be who want to explore the hidden curriculum of finances to learn the best practices for money management, career advancement, and advocacy for yourself and others. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Roberts, a financial educator specializing in early career PhDs and founder of Personal Finance for PhDs. This is Season 23, Episode 5, and today my guest is Mrunal Zambre, a fourth-year international PhD student at the University of Pittsburgh. Mrunal details her money management system, from her checking and savings accounts to credit cards, and how she and her grad student partner split expenses. She focuses on travel credit cards and the Bilt card to reduce the cost of international travel. Thanks to her stipend, recently increased to over $40,000, and low fixed expenses, Mrunal maxes out her Roth IRA annually and invests in a taxable brokerage account, even though she's not sure if she'll live in the U.S. long term. The tax year 2025 version of my tax return preparation workshop, How to Complete Your PhD Trainee Tax Return and Understand It Too, is now available. This pre-recorded educational workshop explains how to identify, calculate, and report your higher education-related income and expenses on your federal tax return. Whether you are a graduate student, postdoc, or postbac, domestic or international, there is a version of this workshop designed just for you. I do license these workshops to universities, but in the case that yours declines your request for sponsorship, you can purchase the appropriate version as an individual. Go to pfforphds.com/tax return workshop to read more details and purchase the workshop. You can find the show notes for this episode at pfforphds.com/S23E5. Without further ado, here's my interview with Mrunal Zambre. I am delighted to have joining me on the podcast today, Mrunal Zambre, a fourth-year PhD student at the University of Pittsburgh, and we are going to be talking through a lot of high-level elements of her finances, from how she manages cash flow to, long-term investing strategies to how do we do some travel as a graduate student. So I'm really excited for this conversation. Mrunal, welcome to the podcast. Would you please introduce yourself a little bit further for the audience?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, happy to be here. So I guess, I came to the US. I'm an international student, so I came to the US in 2016. I came here for my bachelor's. I majored in neuroscience, did a minor in computer science from University of Minnesota. I graduated in May 2020 amidst the raging pandemic that was happening. And after graduating, I stayed in Minneapolis working in a lab that I joined in my senior year. So I stayed on as a research technician, worked in the lab till 2022 on OPT, and then throughout 2021 was applying to grad schools for PhD in neuroscience, and am now at University of Pittsburgh since August 2022.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that background. So let's talk about the money. What's your stipend?
The exact number is $41,199 annually, which comes out to be around $3,180 per month after some taxes taken off. In 2022, it started at $33,000 when I was first admitted, and about a year later, the School of Medicine, which school my program is part of, they decided that all School of Medicine grad programs get a stipend of 40K. So it's a big jump early on, and I think it's a privileged position to be in to get that big of a jump. And after that year, it's been kind of increasing like 2 to 3% for inflation. Yeah,
Love to hear that story. Do you
yeah.
know any like precipitating factors, like why they made that decision?
I'm 100% not sure actually. I don't know. It was a new dean that had just started. I don't know. Maybe there was some built up about cost of living related expenses and stuff. So maybe that played a role, but I'm not sure actually. It was kind of surprise to me as well.
Yeah, but a wonderful surprise, accepting
Yeah,
at 33 and getting a jump up to 40. That's awesome, especially because
yeah.
my understanding is Pittsburgh's sort of a moderate cost of living city, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is it's not people think of it as East Coast, but it's not really that close to East Coast. So pretty affordable, I would say, and I think the stipend goes a long way, luckily.
Amazing. Well, I want to ask you about savings in a moment. But first, can we go over just like baseline expenses about how much you spend on housing, how much you spend on transportation, those kinds of things?
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of affordability, yeah, rent is pretty has been pretty good in Pittsburgh. I'm living with my boyfriend in a one bedroom apartment right now, and the rent right now is around 940. My boyfriend is also in grad school at Carnegie Mellon, so we share the rent, and because he doesn't have a stipend, my share of the rent is around 620 per month.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed that that 900 something was your part of the rent. Oh, okay. Sorry. I have to
No,
like
no,
reconfigure. Okay.
yeah,
So you're paying 620 and he's paying, that would be
the
something like a
remaining,
third,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay. Wow. All right. Some points for Pittsburgh here.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. We
Very,
got
very glad to hear
lucky.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
got a
do the math for me. That's around 20% ish of your take home pay.
yeah. Let's see, 600 around 600 out of 3,000 around there. Yeah,
That's really great. I mean, with other,
yeah.
you're definitely not rent burdened like we hear
No.
from so many other graduate students. So that's amazing. What do you do
Mhm.
for transportation?
The University of Pittsburgh gives us our ID counts as a bus pass. So there is the bus system. There's also a train system, but I don't really use that for my day to day. So that is free for me. I use the bus to get into lab and come back from lab like 5 days a week. And I also have a 2012 Honda Civic. I bought it in 2021 in cash. So no car payments there, but there is an insurance payment, which is about $90 per month. And because it's a Honda Civic, we get pretty good mileage, and we fill up gas. And because we don't drive to work every day, we fill up gas around like once every three-ish or so, three-ish weeks or so. So that comes out to be like $38 per filling.
Yeah, incredibly
Yeah,
minimal transportation
yeah,
expenses. Awesome.
yeah.
I feel like, is there a story around the purchase of the car? Because that was a very difficult time period for
Hmm.
purchasing a car.
Hmm.
So how did you find such a, well, great vehicle, reliable vehicle, 9 years old at the time that you bought it? Like, tell me about your decision around purchasing that car.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I was, I guess, a year out of college, and I was in Minneapolis, a very cold, winter, snowy city. I managed throughout college not having a car because we pretty much spent most of our time on campus. But I think I had just moved out of campus and was like, yeah, I need some way to like move around, and yeah, I think the US is a very car-centric place. And so I started looking, and it was at that point a tougher market. It took quite a bit of time to like come across this deal. I mainly used Craigslist as my source of looking for cars. I did try going down the dealership route, but I didn't really like that culture because I think it was very sales focused, and the salespeople were just telling me that anything they had was a very good deal, and they might have been, but it felt very pressuring. And I guess on Craigslist, you have to sort through the listings over there. And there were some that I met a few times, some good cars, some were no shows. So I think I kept looking, and at one point I was like, um, maybe it's not worth it because I was also going through grad school applications at that point. So I was like, I'll just keep an eye once in a while on Craigslist, see what comes up, and but focus on grad school applications. But luckily, this came up, and I kind of jumped on it pretty quickly because I knew I wanted like I think because my family has a history of driving Honda cars. I knew that they were pretty reliable, and this was a pretty good deal in terms of like how much mileage it had. So I jumped on it, met with the person, seemed like in a good-ish condition, like some rust spots, and I kind of used that to bring down the cash a little bit, bring down the price a little bit, and kind of jumped on it like once it looked good, like checked all the boxes and just went with it. And I've been happy with it so far. It's pretty reliable. No huge like problems with the car. Like the money goes into maintenance, but yeah. So I guess that was kind of the decision process. Sorry, it was long-winded.
Well, the reason I asked about it is because I know a lot of graduate students who are looking at a car purchase are nervous to buy something as old as 9 years old.
Hmm.
Um, I purchased a car when I started graduate school was 6 years old, which was also, a lot of depreciation had also happened. It was a
Hmm.
good deal. Similar to you, I was very patient. I knew what I wanted. I waited. So there's, a big advantage if you can take that into the purchasing
Hmm.
process. Um, but I'm just glad to hear that there hasn't been like majorly anything has gone wrong. We've done a little bit of maintenance. That's to be expected. But I do think it's nice to share a story about someone buying an older car that turns out to be reliable and very inexpensive, right? Because you pay
Yeah.
cash up front. The insurance cost is less when you have a
Hmm.
less expensive and older car and so forth. Like
Hmm.
you said, particularly with the Honda Civic, it's great gas mileage. So on that front, so yeah, I'm glad to hear about that like positive story and just want to kind of assure other people like if you do your homework as best you can about the make and model and then wait for, one that seems reasonable to come up in terms of mileage and everything, like don't be afraid of buying a car that has some years on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think the only like I did get pieces of advice from like my brother and my dad. And the only like major thing that I can pass on is like if it is around 100K in miles, that's okay. And I think the car has still a lot of life left in it.
Hmm.
So it's okay to get a slightly older car.
Especially because it doesn't sound like you're putting a lot of miles on it now. Like,
Yeah.
so if you're not using it for your daily commute, what do you use the car for?
So right now it's kind of been like for groceries on the weekend, if we want to go somewhere for a restaurant or see friends and stuff. So, and take any weekend trips we want to. We used the car when we were moving from Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, so that that was a trip. And at one point, my partner, he was working and early on, like in 2022, and he was using the car. So we kind of share it right now. So I think so far we've accumulated about another like 45K miles on it, and I think we still have a good amount of time left on it. So right now it's mainly for leisure and for our wants rather than our needs.
Yeah. And it's also great when you have that setup of being able to share a car with someone like,
Yeah,
oh, we only need light usage. And hey, the two of us together are using it lightly, like not very expensive.
yeah, yeah. I think it's been great. I'm pretty happy with it so far.
So aside from housing and transportation, do you have any other like major structural expenses that are kind of worth mentioning with your budget?
Let's see. So yeah, housing, transportation, I think groceries definitely. Again, because my partner and I share, I think in total it comes around to be like 500 per month. I think we budget for a little bit and then we always kind of go a little bit extra because I think we both enjoy cooking at home and we prioritize having fruits, vegetables, snacks. So it 500 is okay for us, even though it might seem a little much. Health insurance, thankfully, is covered by the program for me. I only pay for dental and vision, which comes out to be $25 per month. Yeah, those are the major ones.
Yeah. And pretty much everything else sounds like it could be just discretionary types of spending.
Yeah,
So I'll come back to the question that I asked you earlier, which is how much are you able to save? Do you have like a regular fixed savings rate or how do you calculate that?
it's taken a bit of budgeting, like looking at where my money is going and what I have room for. And currently, I'm keeping aside around 880 per month, which comes out, I did the math, comes out to be like around 10.5K per year. And I think that's around 25%. It was a little higher. It varies. It's not always consistent. but that is how much I'm able to save right
Yeah,
now.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit more about the money management then. Like, what accounts do you have? What purposes do you have for them? How do they interact with one another?
So in terms of like what accounts I have, there's definitely a checking account where my paycheck comes into. I keep another savings account, which I keep for irregular expenses, and it is also a high yield one through Capital One, and that I keep around. I'm building on it, but I keep around like 2K in there. And I also have another high yield savings account through Marcus, which I keep a travel fund, a 4 month emergency fund, and a car fund for car maintenance stuff. So in terms of management, yeah, paycheck goes in a checking account. I move whatever money I want to save right away into like the savings accounts or investment accounts. We'll come to that. And yeah, some additional into the higher yield irregular expenses account.
So, why are you splitting some of that targeted savings between the two different banks?
Just for I think ease, like mentally, because I keep my traveled emergency fund and car fund together in that Marcus account, just so that it's building the interest and compounding on a bigger amount. The irregular expenses I could keep in there, but I think I like to see it in the same app as my checking account, kind of as a buffer, like, okay, I don't want to touch my emergency bigger account as much, but let me use this kind of as an in between of
Hmm.
pull into it as I need, but also like put money back into it as I use it up. And like you can make these like bigger savings goals for like emergency fund, but then things like medical expenses sometimes, like I think those can be irregular and not consistent that you can't like really look like budget for every month. So this allows me like, okay, this is just chunk of cash that's sitting for things that come up. And if I do have like a something I really want to buy, like a nice sweater for myself, I can use that money because I've been putting money away into it.
Let me see if I'm hearing this correctly. So it sounds to me like the three types of money that you keep in the Marcus account, probably you withdraw from it less frequently,
Mhm.
right? Emergencies, ideally it's never, but maybe it's sometimes. And then travel, however frequently you travel, is probably not that often. And then car maintenance again, as little as possible, right?
Yeah.
And then the other account, has more flow, right? More
Hmm.
going in, more coming out, because you're probably making withdrawals on a monthly basis for a variety of
Hmm.
different purposes from that account. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it can be monthly, semi-monthly, like every other month. Like it just it's not regular, and that's why irregular expenses.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And then within that Capital One, the smaller account, do you have it delineated? Like, it sounds like you have an idea of the types of things it's for, like medical expenses or like purchasing of clothes, things like that. Do you have like this chunk of money is for this is for this, or is it just like, oh, I kind of just keep it pulled together and I have a sense for how much I can spend in different categories?
Yeah, I've not been delineating it. I guess I've not figured out a way in the app to like make those little buckets within the account. I don't know if there is one. If there is, I would love to use it. But no, I don't think I'm not that strict on allocating that amount into different little buckets. It's more as it's giving me some room to breathe in terms of, okay, I have some money, I can spend it. Yeah,
This may be like a really nitpicky question, but I love talking about targeted savings. So,
me too.
um, if you had like a clothing expense that you wanted to purchase, would you for sure take the money out of that account, or would you like kind of see if you can cash flow it that month and only withdraw if you like needed it?
There have been times where I'm like using my monthly cash flow to like make those purchases. Like I'll try to cut back on certain things on a monthly basis. If like on a given month, if I know I want to make this sweater purchase, for example. But sometimes I guess it depends. Like it depends on if I feel confident that I'm able to cut down my expenses that month to make a slightly bigger purchase towards something else, or if I'm still kind of building my irregular expense account, maybe prioritize building it, so I cut down my monthly expenses. But if it's sitting at a good amount, I can maybe take advantage of having saved up that pool.
Hmm.
And so not worry about my cash flow, but just pull some money out of there. I think it's important, like as you learn to like save, I think it's also important to know and be okay with when to spend it and like be
Hmm.
okay with spending it. So I think that's how I think about it. Like, all right, if I have saved it, you don't want to be too restrictive, then
Hmm.
that can feel like you're not doing anything for yourself. Even though it might feel nice to see your number grow. But I guess yeah, I do get a dopamine hit. I study neuroscience, so I understand that it's good to find pleasure in some ways and use money which you have worked hard to save.
I definitely find pleasure both in saving and in spending.
Yeah.
So it's like great when it goes into savings, great when you get to pull it out of savings, like both ways feel good.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about credit cards as well as kind of another layer on this. So do you use credit cards? How many, you don't have to tell us exactly, but like roughly, how many, what kinds of cards are they? And then how do they play into your cash flow management?
I do use credit cards. It has been a journey of slow learning, experimentation. I started in my senior year, I think, with just a Discover, like the student credit card with their 5% whatever cashback on rotating categories. So I started with just one. I learned very quickly that minimum payments that they say are not really minimum payments. And I was building interest, and it was not very detrimental. But I think just seeing that helped me like learn that okay, I do have to pay it off every month if I don't want to build interest. And so yeah, managing this card alone helped build credit. And then after that, I got another travel card through a recommendation around the time that we moved to Pittsburgh, and that's the Chase Sapphire Preferred card.
I have it as well. I
And
love it.
yeah, I love it. And I used it. So because we were moving, there were some big expenses in terms of the U-Haul and stuff. So we were able to put it on that card and then avail the 65K bonus points that they provide for new card members. And yeah, these points I was able to like eventually use towards like flying back to Indonesia, which is where I'm from that winter. Yeah, so I use that Chase Sapphire Preferred card, and because it kind of gives more points for like restaurants and travel related purchases, I use it at restaurants and like coffee shops. I love coffee. And so that is one card. Then another card is that I opened recently with my partner. It's a Capital One Venture card. It's another similar to Chase Sapphire. So because it's shared, both my partner and I put expenses on it and also used it to get their sign up bonus. And it helped us a lot this past year when my brother got married and he was having like a wedding in Ireland and back home in India, and lots of international travel, lots of clothes purchases, and it actually helped a lot with the flights. We didn't spend that much, like maybe $200 on those flights, so it helped a lot. Then so that is another card. We now use it mainly for purchasing like groceries and like household stuff because it gives 2 times points on all kinds of transactions. The third card that I use is Bilt, which you can use for paying rent. It you know it creates this account for you, and then but you're kind of putting it on a credit card. And I get like 1 times points for my $600 that I pay every month. It doesn't accumulate that much because rent is thankfully not that bad. But once in a while, once it accumulates to a certain point, I'll maybe use it for like a hotel or something, for like a getaway. So it's not a big priority. It's just there just to make use of the $600 that I do spend on rent. And so these are my major cards. I still keep the Discover one active since it's my oldest account and keeps the credit score nice and big. So Yeah, I think these four are the main credit cards that I have.
I like how selective you were about the cards to open. I don't remember if I've talked with another podcast guest who has the Bilt card. It's something I've been very curious about for a while. It seemed great. I understand they've been through kind of a transition recently. Is it still one that you would recommend, even with the new terms or whatever is going on?
Yeah, the transition, I think the process has just started, and I still have to go through the details of like what is happening. Like I think they're still offering a built card, um, despite changing the main like bank that they're working with. And I think like obviously like I still have to do my research on it. My plan is to like look at it, and I think I will still keep or make use of whatever rent payment credit card that they're offering. Um, just because I think it doesn't hurt. You're paying paying the rent every month anyways. Um,
Yeah, just to be clear, at least under the old terms, there was no like fee or anything associated
no
with doing
fee.
this. Like you pay
Hmm.
the exact same amount in rent. They cut a check to your landlord or they go through whatever system you're supposed to be using. And then you just get points that, like you said, you can eventually transfer somewhere else and use somehow. So it's kind of like there really wasn't a downside before. I'm again not clear on what the new terms are, but hopefully it will still be a similar like deal of just like, hey, points on a purchase that you normally don't get any kind of points on.
Exactly. Yeah,
As long
I
as
I
they still pay
don't.
your rent on time, it's gonna
Yes,
work.
exactly. You just have to make sure that, it's another auto thing that you set up. Like, all right, pay this card off, and that's your rent card. So as long as you do that, I don't think it's more work or more fees or anything. So why not? Exactly.
Yeah, and the other two travel cards you mentioned, also ones, like I said, I still hold the Chase Sapphire. We've used the Venture card in the past, and yeah, really great for travel and other types of purchases. Emily here for a brief interlude. Tax season is in full swing, and the best place to go for information tailored to you as a graduate student, postdoc, or postbac is pfforphds.com/tax. From that page, I have linked to all of my free tax resources, many of which I have updated for this tax year. On that page, you will find podcast episodes, videos, and articles on all kinds of tax topics relevant to PhDs and PhDs to be. There are also opportunities to join the Personal Finance for PhDs mailing list to receive PDF summaries and spreadsheets that you can work with. Again, you can find all of these free resources linked from pfforphds.com/tax. Now back to the interview. And let me ask about the shared expenses with your partner, because I know some listeners will be interested in this. So it sounds like you have a credit card that is joint, or both of you are on it, but you don't have any common bank accounts. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah. Just the credit card that is shared.
Okay. And then so you each pay like a portion of the card, for example, and then it sounds like you have the rent split, like you have your portion, your partner has their portion.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. So what we've done, we have had to figure out a good system for ourselves. But what now that we've come to decide on is that shared card will include like groceries, household, and any other shared um, expenses, and we'll pay that in half. And whatever that is our personal. So I see. I forgot to mention one addition to my credit card is the Venture One. So it has no fee, and it has like I think 1.25 points for all purchases. So what I've done is that if I have an expense that is not, restaurants, because if it was restaurants, I would put it on my Chase because that's where it's most beneficial. But I don't want to put it on what's shared because I don't want Peter to pay half of it. Peter's his name. Then I'll put it on this third card and I'll just pay that off. So it kind of accumulates points as well and accumulates along with the points that I get from the shared card. So in the end, it helps. It just helps kind of manage the money a little bit. We could go in and, split transactions and, only select a certain and do the math there of like
Hmm.
how much we want to split. But we want to make a system that works for us and is easy. So this is our in between.
Yeah, I really like that. I've been reflecting recently about managing expenses. It could be between two different people. It could be just as you do within yourself of like regular monthly spending, non-monthly spending, and about how I so much prefer to use account differentiations for those different purposes instead of like, I'm just keeping a massive spreadsheet and I'm figuring out within the spreadsheet, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. I would much rather do what you're doing, which is like, this is a credit card for this kind of purpose. This is a credit card for this kind of purpose. This is an account for this purpose. It makes it more complicated in terms of like the number of accounts that are open, but much more simple in terms of figuring out who pays for what or what
Yeah,
account is drawing for what money. Like that part of it is much, much easier.
exactly. Like there was a point where we were, at the end of the month, we would go through and, make literally like a sheet of our expenses and categorize like, is this the shared one? Is this a personal one? And then do the math to figure out who's paying how much on that card. But it got a lot. It was tiring. We would not look forward to doing them and doesn't help, right? Like we have to pay the credit card. So this is our system that I think we're both happy with.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for telling us about that. Another question that I know people will be very interested in is how are you investing as an international graduate student?
I do invest. I started in around 2022. My partner was the one who kind of encouraged me. And I think initially it was like, ooh, should I invest or not? Like, I don't know about a Roth IRA. Like, I don't know how long I'll be in the country and I don't want the money to be locked up. But I think what I've learned through like learning about personal finance is that, yeah, investing early and consistently is more important. This like early, like the younger you are, and even if you don't know like where you're gonna go or like what it's gonna be like, it's just good to have this money growing. And instead of thinking about the decision point when you're, are finally at that stage of like figuring out what you're doing with your life after you graduate or whatever. So yeah, I do invest. I opened a Roth IRA account in 2022. I only started by like putting in $100 every month because it was new to me. So I sort of started with just that, and then after a few months, I would start putting in like more like 500. And since 2023, I've maxed out my Roth IRA every year. After I figured that out, because it's a tax advantage account, and I learned through, some personal finance books about other ways to get tax advantages like 401k and stuff. But I think as a grad student, as an international grad student, we don't have access to those kinds of benefits. And so there's no 401k, no HSA. So the next best thing for me to do was just using a taxable brokerage account. Despite having to pay taxes on it eventually, I think I just realized that, yeah, again, time is more important in the market. So I just started putting money into it. And so besides the Roth IRA, I've been putting money into the taxable brokerage account since September 2023 and been putting a little over like $200 into it whenever monthly, I think. And if some months I have some extra cash, um, I'll add it to it whenever I can. So that's what makes it. So most of my savings right now, which is around like 800, a little over $800, most of it is investing, and I'll put some into the irregular expenses because I'm pretty comfortable with where my savings and sinking funds are right now.
Awesome. Again, very simple, exactly the decisions that I would have done at the same stage. I was not able to max out my Roth IRA when I was in graduate school, so that's fantastic. But yeah, using the taxable brokerage account right after that makes a ton of sense if you don't have access to the other types of accounts, as you mentioned. 401k, 403b, HSA, all these things are great, not typically offered to graduate students. So we have to work with what is available to us. Let me ask briefly about your investing strategy. Like, how did you choose what to invest in within the Roth IRA and within the taxable brokerage account?
I think it was a lot of reading. So I read these two books. One was recommended to me by my brother. It's called, I think, I've written it down, Simple Path to Wealth,
Hmm.
I think, by J.L. Collins. And the other one is it's titled Friends That Invest by
Hmm.
Simran Kaur.
Haven't heard of that
Uh,
one.
Yeah, so it started off as Girls That Invest, a podcast that I
Mm,
started listening to, and their name has now changed for some legal reason, some law, some I don't know. They changed their name to Friends That Invest. So I came across, like, I think I was first listening to personal finance podcasts, and yeah, what I've learned has been through those two. What I've learned is that yeah, it's better to do just broad index funds. The stock picking does not always work. I mean, it could work, but it's too much effort, and not in the long term, your money grows just as much with broad index funds. So in my Roth IRA, I've put in my money mostly in the total US stock market, um, which is I think BTSX, if I'm correct.
I think that's correct.
And then I've put a little bit into the international market. So I think my split currently is like 85, 15%. So 85 domestic, 15% international. Just my attempt at diversification. I'm not doing any more than this. And then in my taxable, um, it's very similar. I have put my money in the S&P 500, and a little bit into like a Vanguard growth fund. It's like VUG. Um, yeah, I'm not trying that hard. I'm just putting my money into these broad index funds and just watching it grow.
Sounds
And they
lovely.
do
Again,
they do grow a lot. Yeah.
yeah, exactly what I would expect for someone at your like age and stage. Um, and it sounds like for the taxable brokerage account, you also have a very long-term time horizon, right? Like multi-decades.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have certain specific plans for any of these investments at the moment. Like, I think the Roth IRA is definitely super long term, unless I find the need to like withdraw my contributions early. Um, but I don't plan on anything right now. My brokerage account, no plans yet either. Perhaps maybe towards like real estate, like purchasing a house or something down the road. But yeah, I think what I'm just focusing on in terms of investments, just like letting it grow, letting it be, like giving it time at the moment. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have specific plans for it. So as long term as it needs to be.
Great. And then you mentioned earlier, maybe you'll stay in the US, maybe you'll end up moving elsewhere. Have you given any thought or planning to what happens with those investment accounts if you were to leave the country?
Let's see. If I was to leave the country, I think like the taxable brokerage account is easy because I can just I think I don't even know if I would take my money out because people outside of the US also stay invested in the US market. And, being in the US, you're getting dollars, you're getting paid in dollars. It's worth it to just remain invested even after you leave. Um, I mean, it might change logistics in terms of what brokerage platforms you can use. Like currently I use Vanguard. I don't know if I can still use it if I leave the country. I would have to figure that out, but I still think I would stay invested or keep the money in the US market. The Roth IRA, I'm not 100% sure. Like I think, if I need to, I could take out my contributions and just leave whatever capital gain, if I'm using the term correctly, I would leave in it and take it out when I am eligible, which I think is some 59 years old or something like that. So I don't know what the implications are if you leave the country and you have this money sitting in the Roth IRA. I think it's doable. Like I think it's possible to just have it sit and you just take out your money once you can. In either case, I think I would still remain invested in the US market because I think it's the one that has most potential for growth at the moment.
For more discussion on that topic, I'll refer the listeners to I have done two interviews with Hui Chin Chen, who's
Okay.
an expert on investing and taxes for international professionals who cross borders in the course of their
Hmm.
careers. But I mean, what you were saying earlier very much echoes what she said, which is just like get started,
Yeah.
work out the details later.
Hmm.
Because first of all, the situation may not come to pass that you have to leave. Like maybe you will end up living in the U.S. long term. if it does come to pass, you can work out how to transfer, when to transfer, what the tax implications are, all that stuff at that time. And you can use professionals, which is, of course, as a professional, what she would recommend. But yeah, like you said, the important part is just getting started. And I'm so glad to hear that like you didn't allow these questions that we still have to stop you from starting to grow your wealth, because it sounds like it has been significant, even only in the past, few years.
Yeah, I think education around this is important. Like I think everyone is going to come in a little nervous, but I think like which is why I think what you do with your platform is very important, right? Like spreading financial information, especially for grad students who don't have a lot of access to them. So I think educating around this is important, and I think like the end lesson is like time is of the essence at this age because people who are doing PhDs are kind of in their maybe like 20s or 30s, so which is I think a very important time for money to grow. And instead of kind of being on the fence about whether to not do it or, whether to just keep the money in a savings account, it kind of costs you. So if you wait to figure that out till later, when you have more money or more income, you might have already lost amount of money that you could have grown over time.
And I think especially for a grad student like in your situation, so sometimes I'm so gung-ho about investing, and sometimes it's really not appropriate for some graduate students. They really don't make enough money. They have other debt they need to deal with. So I don't want to come across as like investing is always the right choice and you have to get started and you'll be doomed if you don't start in your 20s and all that stuff. But for a grad student like you who has a very nice stipend in a moderate cost of living area, your, fixed expenses are on the lower end, like it really would be squandering the time if you weren't investing right now. So you're doing exactly, the right thing for your finances for where you are. That's not the same for everybody else everywhere else. But yeah, just imagine if you had let those questions, hold you back from getting started. And if you hadn't taken that step, and like, what would you be doing with this money? Like, yeah, it would be building
Hmm.
up in savings, or like maybe you'll be spending a little bit more, but it sounds like you're okay with how much you're spending.
Hmm.
So I'm so glad that you took that step and that you had like these other people in your life who are like encouraging you in that direction. You
Hmm.
obviously did a lot of your own research as well. So I'm just so pleased with this description. And I'm so happy to share this conversation with the audience. And hopefully it'll be encouraging to some people and inspiring. So thank you so much for volunteering to come on the podcast. And I want to end with the question that I asked of all my guests, which is, what is your best financial advice for another early career PhD? And it can be something that we've touched on already in the interview, or it could be something completely new.
In preparing for this, what I've written is that the first thing you should probably do with your stipend is understanding it's the taxes around it. And yeah, so that you know when to pay your taxes, so that down the road the government does not hold that against you, especially if you're international. The next thing I would just say is like, yeah, budget your money, keep some money aside for savings if you can, and focus on building those emergency and sinking funds first. And when you are comfortable and in terms of your emergency and sinking funds, you should start investing. And even a little goes a long way in terms of time. So yeah. And the other advice I think I would give alongside this is automating your transactions or transfers so that you're paying yourself first, in that very cliche statement, but so that you're not thinking about at the end of a month, after doing your needs and wants, like, okay, how much money I have left. Just put that money initially, like start small, see if you're comfortable, try it out. You can change that amount, on a month to month basis, but do that in an automated fashion just so you don't have to think about it or alleviate these decision points and don't have to spend that much energy making those decisions.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Mrunal, thank you so much for volunteering again to come on the podcast, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, this has been super fun. Thank you for having me.
Listeners, thank you for joining me for this episode. I have a gift for you. You know that final question I ask of all my guests regarding their best financial advice? My team has collected short summaries of all the answers ever given on the podcast into a document that is updated with each new episode release. You can gain access to it by registering for my mailing list at pfforphds.com/advice. Would you like to access transcripts or videos of each episode? I link the show notes for each episode from pfforphds.com/podcast. See you in the next episode, and remember, you don't have to have a PhD to succeed with personal finance, but it helps. Nothing you hear on this podcast should be taken as financial, tax, or legal advice for any individual. The music is Stages of Awakening by Poddington Bear from the Free Music Archive and is shared under CC by NC. Podcast editing by me and show notes creation by Dr. Jill Hoffman.